Welcome to hearing how FlexyFoot came about and what the story is. Now, for some of you who maybe don't know what FlexyFoot is a innovative ferrule or replacement to the traditional rubber hard ferrule, and I have a couple of examples to show you. And basically what it does, it goes on the end of a crutch or walking stick to give you shock absorbency and grip, because it's got patented technology in the bellows that adjusts. It's easier to show you this way, adjusts to the angle that you're on, and I'll explain a bit more later on. So it's a very simple product that's able to fit onto standard crutches or walking sticks. So, how did it come about? Well, this is, the last time I gave a talk was about a year ago, which was at my mother's funeral, which was a very, very happy occasion. Not that we were happy that she died, far from it. She was a delightful lady. She was 98 when she died, but she was the inspiration for FlexyFoot. And the reason she was the inspiration was that, I'll give you an example. At the age of 95, I thought, well, I ought to put some bars on her bath to help her get in and out of the bath. So there was I drilling the wall, etc., and she came into the bathroom and said, I'm not having those, take those away, I'm far too young. That got me thinking about designing products for the disabled and the elder market. But first, I'll give you a little background how I came into this industry, because I've come from a completely different path from quite a lot of people. My background, 30-odd years ago, I set up a design and inventing company, and that's what I've been doing for major brands and small startups over the years. That's both my office and FlexyFoot's international headquarters. I say that with inverted commas, but that's where we work. 30 years ago, some of you may know a pop group called the Moody Blues. I bought their recording studio, I split it in half, I live in half of it and I work in the other half. So we're not exactly a corporate entity, as it were. And then over the years, my background is things like designing pens and packaging for Parker Pen, to sinks for Frankie in Switzerland. I've redesigned it as part of the London Underground network after the King's Cross fire. Navigation instruments. So it's a very wide mix of products and technologies. And in some way, it's that cross-fertilization of technology, marketing, etc., that I bring to bear on products, and in particular into FlexyFoot. A classic story I designed, this was about in 1980s for a small toilet cubicle company which started out, I think they were based in Liverpool, with a turnover about 60 or 100,000 pounds. I decided that they should go to the architect market. Now they turn over about 6 million, and their product is made in several markets around the world. But the point about the story is that it was both the design and the way the product is presented to architects, which was the key thing. And the Design Council wrote a book about the story between a designer and an enlightened client. But I think the most interesting thing in terms of this industry, I was asked in 2000 by the government to devise a way to help visually impaired people to vote. If you're visually impaired and you have to go and cast your vote, normally you take an assistant into the ballot booth, as it were, and they say, put your cross here, because you have to use the same paper and the same pen as anybody else. And of course, if your sight is not so good, you're not quite sure where you put your cross. And there are a few stories, and one particular from a famous journalist whose parents were conservatives. He was a socialist supporter. And every year, the Conservative used to get voted in. And he's pretty convinced that his parents said, put your vote cross here by the Conservatives. So there we are. But what it did is that it opened up eyes, and that's not meant to be a pun, in terms of talking to people who have a disability, let's say, and trying to understand their concepts. Because what you can't do with a product like this is to come up with the design, put a blindfold on, and then try it out, because you know what's in front of you. So we set up some focus group meetings with a whole group of visually impaired people and got an understanding into what they needed and how they worked. And it was fantastic. And after, this has been used at every single election since 2000, and we've been getting, we got letters saying, oh, it's great, I can now vote with confidence all on my own. A very simple device, and it uses standard ballot paper and standard pencil. Another product which is actually ironically here is toilets. A very difficult problem. If you go into a disabled toilet, you'll often go in there and there'll be bars on the walls and all sorts of things. And if you're an able person, there's always a stigma about using these products. And the company that we were working with makes a toilet which washes and dries you. And our brief was very much, how do we take this concept and make it adaptable for people who have problems getting off in wheelchairs, etc. And so what we did is put everything onto the toilet. So you can take this toilet, put it in any bathroom anywhere, and it is as less intrusive as possible. So it looks like a conventional toilet, feels like a conventional toilet, but it has all the facilities you need for access. And the arms come down. It's great for reading newspapers, by the way, when you're sat there. So FlexyFoot, how did it come about? Well, my sister sadly has MS, and she's had it for many years. And she was talking to me about the difficulties of using walking aids, particularly changing the ferrule, which is something I'd never thought of, that they used to go down and have a group change day every month or whatever at the hospital. She talked about the discomfort she felt and the lack of security. But basically, there was also this notion that all products, a lot of products, let's say, for less able people are very institutionalized, and they're not particularly elegant in terms of their design, their function, and they make you look older and feel older than you actually are and less able. And so she was talking about ferrules, and I always enjoy a challenge, and I suddenly thought, if we take a light bulb moment, you always have a bottle of gin when you have one of these. If you take a jack in the box or a bellows, it's basically a suspension system, and it's very easy and cheap to make, a little plastic device. And if you stick it on the end of a walking stick or a crutch, you get the benefits of shock absorbency and adjustment all built into one. And really, that was the key point where FlexyFoot came about. I was talking before about cross-fertilization. I had designed a bellows just previously that was designed to inject high-pressure liquids into pressurized systems to overcome various patents. And it was looking at that invention, I suddenly thought, we could take that and use it here. And so the very first prototype was actually one of those bellows I'd previously designed. So the next phase, this was about 2009, I think 2010. The next phase is always to do a sort of patent search to see what IP is out there. The irony with walking aids, and particularly ferrules, and it's rather sad, but all the patents, you get a sort of two hoops, as it were, or I should say peaks, which are Second World War and the First World War. Obviously, people coming back from war injured, wherever. But we've found nothing like it when we did our patent searches. The other thing we did is to look at the competition, and again came up with this idea that there were lots of Me Too products. All crutches were very similar, if not identical. All walking sticks were very similar. There were some with pretty patterns on, but that was about it. But fundamentally, there hadn't been rethought, and there was a lack of functionality in terms of the user, I have to say. I have to be careful what I say, because I have a previous manufacturer of crutches in the audience. But they are very much driven by cost as well. So the internet searches said, people desperately wanted nicer, more functional, better products out there. And I thought, well, James Dyson was several years ahead of me at the Royal College, and what he did with the vacuum cleaner market, I thought we could possibly do with the user aids, the walking aid market. James Dyson, when he designed, James Dyson, when he designed his vacuum cleaner, the upmarket was about £100 for an upmarket vacuum cleaner. He launched his vacuum cleaner and it's £250. I bought one, foolishly, because it was okay, but it was, it was all right. If you now buy a vacuum cleaner, all the upmarket vacuum cleaners are 250 quid. He's absolutely, totally transformed the market. And I was reading the other day that he's just building a £2 million hangar for his £15 million private jet at Bristol Aircraft. If we could do a little bit of that, I'll be quite pleased. The other story that I always held dear is the Good Grips. Good Grips, which you may know, are a range of kitchen utensils, and now they're just #1 product in the brand. Actually, they were designed by an American guy whose wife had rheumatoid arthritis back in, I think, the 90s. And I bought some when I was in America. And I was so impressed with these products, I bought a whole load home. So there's a product designed for a specialist market, i.e. people with a grip problem, then become mainstream. And what I'm trying to do with walking aids is to say, okay, they're specialist products, but let's move them into mainstream so that you can go into a normal retail shop and you see some nice designed products. So if we just talk about the technology employed, the key thing with all this stuff is your patent protection, and we've spent an absolute arm and a leg on patents around the world. We've got patents in China, Japan, Australia, etc. The key thing about the bellows, about the product, is this part. This uses the same technology you use to make say a plastic bottle, which you have your water in. Now, if you think about the cost of that, that's a very small amount of money. So it uses that technology, but it's a very special material, an alloy that we made. And that is basically a sealed chamber that acts as an air spring. If you take some upmarket 4x4 cars, they have an air spring technology as their suspension system to give them lots of movement and grip. This is exactly the same technology, effectively. And so molded onto the bellows is the grip, the rubber grip itself, and molding that to that it took us a year of product development to get that right. That is, if you go to any injection molder and you say, "Can you make that, please?" He'll say, "You can't do it." And the reason for that is that you're squirting plastic at about 70 bar, which is 70 times atmosphere pressure, over a hollow, thin-walled molding, and it would just collapse immediately. But it took us 2 years, well, it took us a year plus a little bit more to optimize it. But that is really the secret of FlexyFoot. I talked before about Parker Pen and Gillette. Parker Pen and Gillette make their money on the refills. I thought when we were designing FlexyFoot, and bearing in mind what my sister said about having to change these things, why don't we make this an easy-to-change refill? And so the way it works is you simply screw it in, you click it in, and that's your product. To change it, you unclick it, take it out, throw it away, and fit a new one in. And I won't give away too many trade secrets, but it's no surprise that refills for us account for about 18 to 20% of our sales, which is an indication that people actually quite like FlexyFoot. Having got an early prototype of the bellows, and you can see it up there, we thought, well, is it going to work? Is it going to stand up to the stresses and strains that you'll get in use? We read all the standards, we went through all that, we wrote our technical files and our CEE files, etc. But none of the standards actually accounted for a design that actually moved. They were just, the testing was just up and down like that. And I thought, well, what we needed to find out quite quickly before we went too far is, will it do that? And if so, how many times will it withstand that? So I built a very simple test rig, as you can see there, and I ran it, and it went rather like going into IKEA, and you see the drawers going. And every time it sort of went, there was a kind of, and unfortunately I was living rather close by, so it was a bit noisy, but we ran it for a weekend, and fantastic results. It worked superbly well. And then we ran a competitor, just a standard ferrule that we bought from the store. And what was interesting, we were still running at 100,000 compressions and with no wear at all and no damage to the bellows. Yet the competitor, I won't call it competitor, the standard ferrule was worn at an angle and clearly could become a little dangerous because you have no tread left in one side. We also did slip tests and grip tests to see what friction we had. And again, tests showed we had twice the amount of grip than a standard ferrule. So that gave us a bit of confidence to then move on and start looking at some other design issues, such as we wanted a non-marking tread so that you wouldn't leave marks. The other point we noticed that with conventional ferrules, which have an array of rings, you could get little stones trapped inside, and if you did that, you had a slippery situation. So we designed a tread which was easy to clean, but also had wear markers on, just like a car tyre, so if it wore, you knew when to change it. And again, that was part of the refill concept. The next thing we wanted to do is to carry out some initial user trials, and we appointed an organisation in London called AT Care, who was set up specially to try and develop assistive technology products by the government. And they showed FlexyFoot, without telling them any too much detail, to a panel of people they brought in. And the response was very favourable, which gave us the confidence to move forward. And we were raising investment as we were going along, so we needed this reassurance from people to secure the investment. At the same time, I fortunately had a friend who's a leading orthopaedic surgeon, and he put me in touch with the Runnymede Independent Hospital Group, and or the BMI, I should say. And the Runnymede Hospital ran a patient trial for 6 months using some early prototypes, and the results were fantastic. We had something like about 95% people said they loved the product, had less pain, felt safer and more secure. And the irony is that one of the investors was a very large guy from Jamaica, I think, and he had a very bad car accident, and he had been in crutches for 4 years. He was given this, and at the same time, his award of £1.5 million for the accident came in, and he rang me up today and said, I want to invest in your company. And when we launched in, I think it was 2010 here, Naidex, Owen was on the stand for a day, and he was our #1 salesman. So it was great. It's a bit, you may have heard of the Victor Kiam story, how Victor Kiam bought the razor company. I've always felt with all products, and particularly in this area, that the way you communicate your message is critical. And with products as well as messages, I like this notion about putting a smile in the mind. So somebody picks up the product or picks up the packaging and goes, oh, that's clever, or I like that, or that's nice. And so what we've tried to do with the corporate identity, which is key, is to create something which is a bit of fun, which suggests mobility, and goes the opposite to no mobility. And things like the packaging, for example, has little slots on the side so that you can measure the size of your aid at point of sale. And people, you know, that sort of thing is very, very important. And so, in fact, the stand on the top was the first stand we did at Naidex. And you could see that the silhouettes we created kind of created a story about showing that how the different environments in which you could use a walking aid, use FlexyFoot, and also suggest to people they could become more mobile and more comfortable. So the next major phase was really going for worldwide patents, and we've, as I said before, we've spent an absolute arm and a leg on patents around the world. It's an interesting process, patenting. I don't know if any of you have done it, but you file a patent in, say, the UK, and you may, and then you go to PCT stage 18 months later, and then you have to file all the way around the world. So very early on in the development process, you have to select which countries you want to invest in without actually knowing whether you're going to get any distribution or any commercial success there. So that's always a bit of a challenge. And then the process can take years. We've still got 1 or 2 patents still coming through. But you need a really good patent agent, would be my strong advice. And the other thing to watch out for is that when you're patenting abroad, particularly, say, in America, you've got very little control about your costs, because you just simply don't know what the examiner is going to throw up in terms of objections to your submission. And then you have to, your patent agent has to work with a local patent agent, and you simply are completely out of control. So it's a very difficult problem. We had a trademark challenge to our FlexyFoot trademark in the early days from a large American company, which was they were in a different area, but it was a closest name. And we decided to take on Goliath, and I'm happy to say we won. And the reason we won is because I went around getting evidence from all sorts of people, including the BHTA, etc., to prove that we were totally different channels and there could be no confusion between the names. But that took about 9 months to sort out, and it was a pretty scary time because we had committed to the name, we'd committed to the .com, the .co we committed to the graphics. And if we had to change the name, we'd have had to start again and lose months and lots of money. Okay, so that's that was the initial video. When we launched at Naidex, I was quite stunned actually. We decided, somebody suggested selling the product off the stand, which I have no experience of marketing or selling. So we set up a little stand, and we had a little sign there saying, you know, Naidex special, you know, 2 shillings or whatever. And I was completely stunned by the number of people who came on board and to buy the product. And I accused of people wanting to try the product. I had distributors, some of the large distributors, I'm not naming any names here, coming along. They're saying, well, hey, we want to talk to you because obviously this is going really well. And I said, look, I can't. We're trying to sell product. I'll come and talk to you later, which I did do, excuse me, and met a couple of them. And they said, we want to put you in the catalogue. You'll be paid $355. And with all the other ferrules, is that okay? And by the way, your product is too expensive. And I said, well, a couple of problems here. A, we are like 10 times more expensive than a standard ferrule. So being in the back of the catalogue is not going to work without promotion and selling. And you know, how are you going to do it? No, so it's clear it wasn't going to work. So the other point I should say is that no customer has ever mentioned price. You know, in fact, I've got some emails on file that have said you're too cheap for the functionality and the design that you're doing. So we had to have a rethink. And I met up with True Life, who some of you may know, which is the UK's #1 manufacturer of crutches. And they said this is the complete game changer. And we can convert like 20–30% of crutches we supply into the NHS, which is their major market. So we said, great, okay, we signed a contract, and we moved ahead with that. That freed me up from the UK, because I thought they would be then handling and tackling the UK market, which, after all, the NHS is by far the biggest customer. And I moved abroad. I went to exhibited at ReaCare in Germany in October, and we had exactly the same reaction over there that we had over here. We had the major German crutch manufacturer coming along and saying, hey, we want your product, we want to sell it. We had a Swedish crutch manufacturer that they took over the entire Nordic market for FlexyFoot. And I had a digestion problem because fundamentally the company was only me, so I was having to deal with about a pile of overseas inquiries about that long. And I decided to focus on 4 countries. We then expanded into Australia. I was approached by an Australian company and various other countries that you can see there.
My name's Simon Baker.
I'll go back, just hold this for a moment. About this time, I was approached by a guy in Ireland who said, I want to try your Flexy feet. So I just sent him a couple of pairs.
My name's Simon Baker. I'm a below knee amputee, and I use the crutches because it's a way of me keeping active and fit. In 2008 I did the Dublin Marathon, where I completed it on the crutches, earning myself a place in the Guinness Book of Records for the fastest marathon on one leg. About to embark on a challenge whereby we're going to walk from Dublin to Limerick in Ireland. It's a distance of 140 miles plus. We hope to complete this in 5.5 days, and we're doing it in aid of the ISPCC Childline charity. I've a good fitness instructor with me, Jason Kenny, who's taken me 3 days a week He's training me in the gym. We're doing a lot of gym work, and this is where the Ferrell's Flexy Foot come in out, because I'm able to get my walks and my gym work in as well.
I suppose basically working with Simon, I found that with the traditional crutch, he was getting a lot of pressure through the arms. So what was happening was he's feeling the forearm, the triceps, the traps and the deltoid muscles and things like that. With the introduction of the Flexy Foot Ferrell, Simon was able to put more effort into his training in the gym. So as a result, it was more a pre-habilitative state as opposed to a rehabilitative state. So it's really been a godsend for all the world, you know.
The other thing is with the Ferrells, there's a shock absorber on it. The shock absorber, for me, not only stops the hands blistering, but they take the shock rather than the shock coming up and through the arms and through my wrists and up into my shoulders. FlexyFoot's helped me in a lot of ways. As I say, first, I know I'm safe and secure whilst I'm out training. The second thing is that with FlexyFoot, I'm able to train a lot more, train a lot harder, and this is only the beginning. Again, it's all part of stability, because I mean, the biggest problem I had with the other crutches is even when I was training for the marathon, there was a few times in bad weather you'd slip or slide. With these, you know you've 100% contact. Not only that, it doesn't matter what angle. If you hit a stone, if the ground's uneven, you'll constantly know that you've got that stability, which means that you can power on with your walk. You see, for me, being a below leg amputee, to get my prosthetic's good for walking. For my prosthetic to go running, it just is no good for me. But I like to get out and I want an endurance sport. With FlexyFoot, I'm able to keep this endurance up, and it means I can get out there and I can still do the miles and know that I'm safe.
So Simon made that video. We don't pay him, we do nothing, so he did all that. And the Irish amputee football team also used FlexyFoot for their matches. So what we learnt from the marketing up to that point, first of all, one of the difficulties we have had is that when we go abroad, there's so many layers of margin. For example, when we export into the Nordic countries, that you get a 50% margin at both the importer or distributor level, plus at the retailer level. So there you are with a FlexyFoot that suddenly costs you €30 plus any VAT that applies, and that we found hindered sales. The other problem is that most of the healthcare providers around the world, and of course including the NHS, really have very severe financial pressures on them. A pair of crutches to the NHS typically costs, I don't know, £6 to £7. You put a pair of FlexyFeet on there, you add at least £20. Therefore, trying to convince budget holders of the merits of FlexyFoot as a standard fit to crutches, NHS crutches, has proven to be an extremely tough decision. But on the other side of that balancing thing is that customers absolutely love FlexyFoot. We get extraordinarily high customer advocacy, which I'll talk to in a moment. Price is never an issue. And we get constant emails from people saying, almost every day, you've changed my life, or I'm more mobile, I feel safer. And that sort of thing makes it all kind of worth it. We also felt that a static picture of the product, if you saw that as a picture, doesn't tell you anything. And we needed a means to reach out to people to try and communicate this idea. What we decided to do is to make a TV advert, because our Dutch distributor sells their products via TV, and then to show it during daytime TV.
If you use crutches or a walking stick and you feel discomfort, try new FlexyFoot air cushioned tips for sticks and crutches. FlexyFoot gives you 50% more grip than some traditional ferrules. Feel the difference. Slippery surfaces are a walkover too. Give it a spin. FlexyFoot, so easy to fit and order. Visit flexyfoot.com or call free phone 0800 0285 888.
Okay, so this is the first TV advert that I'd ever made, and we wrote it ourselves and commissioned a filmmaker to make it. It was quite a challenge because you have to go through all the broadcast authorities to get approvals. For example, in an advert, if you say today's Tuesday, you have to prove it's Tuesday, and you're not allowed to knock the competition. So we couldn't say a standard ferrule or standard walking aid will cause problems. You had to be extremely careful. It took us about 3 to 4 months to get the script passed, and then we made the advert. But immediately we showed it, sales directly went up by 400%. So we thought, we got something here. So moving on. Now, I had a weekend in Camden, Chipping Camden, I should say, about 9 months ago, maybe a bit more. And I met quite a few people who were walking around with hiking poles when they should clearly have been using a walking stick. So I went up to some of them and I said, excuse me, do you mind if I ask you a question? Why are you using a hiking pole which has got a sharp metal point on the bottom of it when, you know, maybe a walking stick would be a better solution? Oh, I'm far too young for that. Or walking sticks make me feel old and make me look less able. I'm independent, etc. And so I suddenly thought, well, maybe there's a route for us to go here to design a complete range of walking aids which are stylish, functional, and move away completely from the sort of NHS style and into a whole new market, and help us move walking aids into the mainstream retail market. And one of the reasons is that over the years we've had many requests with people with hiking poles to say, can you fit FlexyFoot to my hiking pole? And the answer is no, because most hiking poles are tapered. So what should we do? We should design our own hiking pole. And so what we've done is designed a range of walking aids which are clearly very different from the standard walking aid, but have added functionality. So the key points, I'll put that down. So the key points are that it obviously doesn't look like a walking aid, a conventional walking aid. It looks very different. And the weight, or the handle, your weight is designed to go straight through the vertical pole without being offset. It also got a soft rubber grip area to give you improved grip. And the handle width is designed so that it spreads the load or forces in your hand as much as possible. But we wanted all that functionality without it looking like a bit of sort of, you know, ergonomic sort of nightmare, as it were. So that's FlexyFoot. We've branded it up, and we're quite proud of the branding we've put on there. And everyone, yes, comes with FlexyFoot. And so we showed some early samples to some, let's say, older people, and we showed, you know, ones without branding, simple designs, and they all said, oh no, we like that one, or we like the bright blue one. So we knew clearly we were onto something. And again, we're getting fantastic response. This is only launched 2 months ago, and we are getting a fantastic response to these aids. Equally, we designed a hiking pole, which is multifunctional, so you can use it like a hiking pole that way, or use it that way. And again, they all come with the FlexyFoot features. We obviously, how you market the product is incredibly important, and we decided to take some you know, market or positioning shots of the type of people that people may aspire to. So we didn't want to go too old, too young, whatever. And we took these in the countryside and in Guildford. Again, spending quite a lot of money on the right imagery. And that basically is the range. So we've got folding sticks, we've got telescopic sticks, hiking poles, and we're even now doing crutches. And these we buy in from Germany. Our German distributor makes those, and we fit the FlexyFoot on there. So that's the story of FlexyFoot. Where we go from now is an interesting challenge, but what we're doing is to moving into more mainstream retail. We're building affiliations with major brands. We're in Boots, for example, and the plan is to try and energize this whole sector. Thank you very much indeed.